Sufis claim that there is an evolutionary plan for the planet Earth, and that history, seemingly haphazard and random, is not the blind, accidental process it seems. The evolution of organic life was supervised, and in the same way, the human race continues to be guided, encouraged, or restrained into alignment with a universal plan. The Sufis, who have been known by different names in different ages, are said to be agents of this supervision, and, to the extent which is necessary for their ministry, they are given access to the plan. The plan is known as the Naqsh, the design. Such a presence in human life has only rarely been stated overtly, and perhaps least of all in recent centuries, when such an idea would have been difficult to dovetail with the interpretations of human life suggested by formal religionists or the later materialist philosophies. The Sufi influence on history has never been by physical or mental duress, and is almost always indirect, little seen, and tangential. Promising laymen, known as receivers, may be influenced to start such an organization, and may do so under the impression that the idea was their own. Sufi experience indicates a huge number of movements for human welfare have been unobtrusively guided in this way. Sometimes notable figures in such organizations have suspected that certain sympathizers, advisors, sometimes philanthropists, have been in some way not ordinary. Those who sense this may be taken into the Sufi confidence to the extent appropriate for their testing as possible candidates for the path. The idea of such an extraordinary support may seem unlikely, but the part which I was allowed to play in conjunction with my own eventual understanding made me realize that the elements I saw represented only a fraction of the continuous, worldwide Sufic connection with human affairs. For example, it is now more widely accepted that the Saracen armies which came through North Africa to invade Spain in 711 AD were accompanied by a Sufi presence, and it was this which, through the cultural centers of Fez, Cordoba, Seville, Granada, and elsewhere, helped arrange for the renewal of a learning in Europe which was emerging from the Dark Ages. It is not generally known, however, though it has been occasionally suspected, that the migration from Europe to the New World was similarly accompanied. Sufis from a number of European countries were among the settlers and became a continuing presence in modern America, which, incidentally, some Sufis call Third America. Few Americans have ever suspected that Sufis from England, Germany, Bulgaria, and elsewhere, even from China, settled in America and have, ever since, exerted an influence in the science, education, and arts of the country. This presence, technically called the residents, has only recently been suspected by the wide-ranging community of Americans who are at present assembling on the Sufi path, as a consequence of the new presentation of genuine Sufism, which began about 1960. It is not an exaggeration to say that many esoteric and occult groups worldwide are constructed upon material which has either been imitated from mainstream Sufism or has been discarded by Sufis as having no longer any dynamic. The material to reconstruct this history has been in print, though dispersed, for 2 centuries. A large number of such groups all over the world have even adopted the word Sufi to describe themselves, with a consequent effect on genuine Sufic operations. Any hint of the range of Sufi activity is invariably met with a reaction from the layman roughly in the following terms. If such an influence really exists, and Sufis possess powers beyond the ordinary human powers, why is the world in such a mess? The Sufi answer is that the design, of its very nature, excludes indoctrination or forcible direction of any kind. Man is not to be compelled to evolve. He may only be shown the evolutionary road and assisted along it when, of his own volition, he takes this option. When he rejects it, the overseeing power, al-taftish, known as the inspectorate, can only work to mitigate the consequences, sometimes over centuries, and to amplify the effects of a right choice whenever this is made. Sufi attendance on the human scene extends to examples of virtually every social and cultural activity. Serious aberrations in the course of human affairs are called imperfections, and when these are seen to have occurred or to be imminent, those responsible for them report back to the Sufi organization. If it is agreed that the events reported are seriously at variance with the design, or will develop as such, action is agreed, and those responsible for taking the action are delegated. The action is termed mudakila, going in or intervention. Matters which the Sufis recognize as imperfections may not conform with what the lay observer would always include in this category of things going wrong. Imperfections may be detected perceptually, or they may be signaled by early trends reported in an ordinary, everyday fashion. An extensive Sufi organization exists to monitor news. The present system was first introduced over 1,000 years ago and is maintained without a break to the present day. Action decided by the Sufi organization is taken on the basis of a perception whose present moment is vastly greater than that of ordinary life. For instance, a local imperfection might, if left unrepaired, have no visible consequences for perhaps the present generation. But from the perspective of the Sufi organization, it may be seen that a serious deviation from the design would arise in the distant future. Such a flaw may be neutralized and its consequences negated by means of an entirely ordinary, even trivial intervention. For instance, let us imagine that a current of thought, gathering strength in a certain locality, may be one capable of culminating in the future as a serious aberration of the design. It may perhaps be neutralized by no more than a decision to sponsor competitive sport in the locality. Out of no discernible context, the community concerned will now suddenly find organizations dedicated to sport springing up. Local inhabitants who are interested in sport and have an organizing flair will find themselves in demand and may be surprised to find facilities, sponsors and advisors turning up by happy accident. It is here that the interface between Sufi intervention and ordinary life is to be found. Whilst this is an imaginative example, it does accurately suggest a pattern of Sufi intervention using this mechanism. Such intervention occurs intermittently in every aspect of human life, not excluding the physical sciences, psychology, charity, art, and human organization. At the present time, there is a virtual industry manned by well-meaning people who feel they have a mission to counteract materialism by developing groups and contacts so that spiritual people may get together. Some of them are deeply convinced that there is an urgent task to be performed and that they have a place in it. The fact that adequate contacts and activities already exist and always have been is unknown to them. If they are told this, they may not believe it, and the reason is obvious. They fear they will be deprived of a role. Often they have been convinced that nobody is doing anything. But reinventing the wheel does not recommend itself to those who are already employing it. This urge to do something useful is of course wholly good. What is unfortunate is that those who have this desire to this degree are still, consciously or unconsciously, too motivated by vanity, and hence usually cannot make the contact which alone would convince them that all is well, all is in good hands, and even to take a real part in the work.